Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host Flavia Barris as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur. Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Lifestyle Solopreneur podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with Dr. Dolores Fazzino, DNP-RN. She is a doctor of nursing practice, as well as a nurse practitioner and an author, and is a distinguished pioneer and visionary bridging the world of spirituality and wellness. Her company, Recovering Healthcare, breathes new life into patient wellness through education, empowerment, compassion, and connection, and prepares patients for a successful surgery. And hey, lifestyle solopreneurs, you know either someone that's about to have a surgery, has had a surgery, or that might even be you. She has over 38 years of nursing experience. She's assisted in approximately 9,000 surgeries. That's right, 9,000 surgeries. So she knows what works to create positive outcomes for patients who are undergoing that process. She has intuitive abilities. She was gifted since she was a child with them, and she's always been on the cutting edge of what's new. She's been a surgeon's right hand on complex procedures more times than she can count, and she's worked in the specialties of neurosurgery, orthopedics, urology, and gynecology using minimally invasive and robotic techniques. She is a visionary, lifestyle solopreneurs. She founded the Concierge Surgical Coaching Program, which offers enhanced preparations to patients who are going to undergo surgery. And I mean, this is just an amazing bio. She trained not only at the prestigious Yale New Haven Hospital, she worked under the revolutionary Dr. Bernie Siegel. If you know of him, he's an international expert and surgeon in the field of cancer treatment. She earned her Doctor of Nursing Practice degree in 2008 from Case Western Reserve University, which is one of the top nursing programs in the nation. And I mean, this woman is on the cutting edge. And then she decided to put it on paper. She wrote the book, Help, How Do I Get the Most Out of My Healthcare Experience? And it is a must-have resource to assist you, your friends, your family, anyone you know who needs to maneuver through our very unfortunately complicated healthcare system. She also wrote Spiritual Wellness for Life, where she shares stories about those aha moments that can change your life forever. Her books are available through her website, recoveringhealthcare.com/books, and she resides here in the same town as me, beautiful, sunny San Diego. Welcome to the show, Dr. Dolores.
Thank you, Flavia. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, we are very blessed to live in San Diego.
I know. And I just love it when I get to interview someone that's a local, because I talk to people all over the country, the world. That's the beauty of today's connection era. But, you know, when it's someone who's just up the freeway from me, it's really nice too.
Oh, of course. It's like you never know who's in your backyard.
I know. And it definitely helps a little bit with the scheduling too. We're in the same time zone.
Yes, added bonus for sure.
So what do you do as your way to make a living? Because I know you're a lifestyle solopreneur. You have a virtual practice, which means you no longer have to clock in and out of hospitals or clinics, and you get to set your own schedule, your own hours. What do you do these days?
Well, what do I do these days? I kind of have a variety of things, and I really don't have a determined set schedule of what I need to accomplish every day. I've really gotten away from that driven type of modality. I allow things now to come to me and experience more receptivity in the way that I do business. I think for a long time, many of us have been taught that we need to work, and push the boulders up the hill to make something happen. And you know what? You get so exhausted that it's like you're really spinning your wheels half the time and not really going anywhere. So I decided that what I'm going to do from now on is to be in a moment of receptivity, because as we know, when we're more receptive, you're actually more connected. And it sounds kind of skewed, and I'm going to say this in a different way, hopefully to clarify for some people. It's the whole concept of less is more. And when we look at our society, the way our society has been running for, decades, maybe centuries, it's always driven on production, produce, keep doing. But do we ever really know what it's like to just be? There's a significant difference between efforting and doing and being and allowing. And I feel that we're kind of at a bridge in humanity's evolution where people are getting tired of doing it the old way, and they're just getting exhausted and actually making themselves sick. They're under so much pressure to produce that there's no more blood coming out of the turnip.
Right. And we're really pushing for it too. I like how the imagery you used, pushing the boulder up the hill, because it really is a lot of that. And I think people are being pushed to have it all, which turns into being pushed to do it all. And we celebrate people who are extremely busy as these high achievers who have a lot going on and they're very successful, or they must be, because look at them, like a busy bee going from place to place and dropping off the kids and rushing to their second job and, pulling an all-nighter to get this other thing done. And then I think society for a while has really looked at somebody sitting in a hammock watching the ocean, and there's maybe almost a negative slant to that. Like, why is that person just sitting there being lazy unless they're on vacation? And that vacation better be a week long, because 2 weeks is kind of a splurge, And that is the way people have been sort of leaning. And maybe you and I are part of the movement to help people lean out. That's what I would tell Sheryl Sandberg, the author of Lean In, the Facebook CEO who wrote that book on, come on, ladies, get in the game, raise your hand, hire a nanny, step it up, take all the assignments, make yourself seen, make yourself heard, which I think in some ways is great. I'm a feminist at heart, but then on the other, gender aside, I almost want to tell everybody, the males, the females, everyone in the workplace, maybe just sometimes we should lean out a little bit.
I believe that it's really a balance. When you look at the way things are, I kind of call this the masculine representation of what our world's like, because, a lot of times women have had to adapt to that world and become more masculinized instead of allowing their femininity to come in and lead by their feminine power. So what we're seeing now is that when, we have these two different paradigms, and I agree with you, Flavia, because it's bridging the two, and how I feel we could be effective in bridging the two is just imagine the affinity sign, the figure of 8 on its side. And it's like sometimes we have to play over in that and be, a little more driven, but not constantly. And sometimes it's better to be a little more receptive and allow things to unfold instead of trying to push it up a hill and create something. So it's a balance between doing and being. It's not like you're on a continuum and we've catapulted to the far end where we're always doing. And so we flip it over and do the 180 extreme where we're always being. That's not effective either. It's about blending the two together and marrying the two and knowing when to ebb and flow with that. I think that's the secret sauce.
And it's easier than it sounds, but I think when somebody's committed to finding that for themselves, it can be found. And I think it's funny to think of it as something that you have to work for. You have to work hard to work less. But sometimes it does take effort at the beginning to set your life up and a pattern up and to get off the fast track, to slow down, that takes the effort.
And it does. And it's so easy to get distracted and go back into that as well.
So true. So for you, what has prompted this change? You said you're having a shift right now. You're going to be open and receptive to new things coming into your life. So you were at a stopping point, a breathing point where you could pivot, you could shift. How does that look for you, that journey?
Well, it's been an interesting journey because about a year ago, in June of 2015, I left an entrepreneurial career of assisting in surgery after about 22 years because, as entrepreneurs, you're always listening to that little voice that's within yourself. It's almost like you have this pipeline to, I don't know where you want to call it, source, God, or your higher self, but you have these ideas and you're a visionary. And so you can kind of foresee things as they're going to show up. It's about learning what the time span is, because I used to be about 6 to 8 years ahead of myself. I'm probably about 4 to 6 now. But what I'm saying is that knowing, okay, that this is a possibility, the timing isn't right, but it will be in such and such a time. What do I need to do to start making this happen and working towards that? So it's about knowing your timeline, knowing yourself well, having these ideas and not giving up in the process of doing it. It's like holding the long-term vision of it. But for me, what I decided to do after I left my career a year ago, June, was that I had created that business 22 years prior with the whole thing of efforting and pushing boulders up a hill. And it was exhausting. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to try something different, because I don't think it has to be this way. And it doesn't have to be this challenging or fatiguing. So I decided that I was going to spend more time in reflective time, either doing self-care and self-nurturance, which is really an important foundational piece, because everything starts from within us and it manifests out. And I know for a lot of people, that's a very difficult concept to grasp, because they're always looking for what they need outside of themselves. What I'm telling you is that we have everything that we could ever possibly want for ourselves. It's already there for us. We just have to learn how to open the doors of receptivity to allow that to come to us. So how we've been programmed here is like we're always trying. If you were in my household when you grew up, it's like if you were hanging around doing nothing, your parents were going to find a job for you to do something around the house because they felt that you weren't being occupied. And so we were always constantly doing in our house and very little of being, yet this was an important thing. And so when people look at their life history and their family history and maybe the cultural history, is that the apples don't fall far from the tree. If your belief system in your family was that you have to work hard in order to succeed, that's what you were brought up with, and that's what has been embedded in you. But those really aren't your true beliefs. That's what's been molded. You've been molded into that. In our true essence, everything is easy and effortless. We just have to make that decision for ourselves.
Amen to that. We are part of the same tribe. That's for sure.
But so what I've been doing is spending more time in reflective time, and I'm just following my intuition. Okay, should I go to this networking group today? And then if I go to it, it's like I always say to my higher self, it's like, okay, connect me with the people that are going to get me to my next steps. And that usually always happens. I usually meet some incredible people that have the next piece of the puzzle for me.
Isn't that just such a great skill, is listening to your intuition? I think a lot of people, they're kind of deaf to their intuition, or they hear something, they just don't listen. And that gets people in trouble.
You and I both know this. And I think everybody has their stories on this, because it is so true. That time that little nagging voice was saying, don't do it, and you overrode it and did it, you live to regret it. We've all been there. It still happens.
So I like to ask solopreneurs what a very terrifying moment in their business was. And I don't know if for you that was maybe right after last summer, when you walked away from a job that was very secure and it had a title and you knew what people expected of you, you were very skilled at it, and you just sort of walked away, or if there's a different time in your life that was a challenge or scary for you.
Well, I think as solopreneurs, I love the diagram that I've seen before. I've seen it on Facebook. It's like the life of an entrepreneur, and it has this iceberg. You only see the tip of it. And underneath it, it's all these beliefs, ideas. It's like a roller coaster at times. On the top, you give the impression that everything's going fine, but there's so much depth going on to what's going on. So I find that being a solopreneur has really been a very deep personal growth opportunity, because it brings up all your stuff. all your beliefs around money, all your beliefs around success, all your beliefs about worthiness and having it. I mean, it really comes up. So it's like you're playing in a playground of all these, beliefs and ways of looking at things. And it's a real great way to open up yourself to be your most vulnerable. But when you're the most vulnerable, I feel you're really truly authentic and being genuine as well. And I think that is so important because when you connect with people, people are seeing that essence within you.
So true. And we have a lot of solopreneurs who faced sort of what you did, where they have a full-time job, where they are so busy and overworked and stressed out maybe at that job that they can't really start something on the side or follow an entrepreneurial impulse or idea. And what would you say to people in that position? Do you think that people should just try to fit it in, start things on the side, or is it better to start clean with a clean slate, blank canvas, walk away from a full-time job that is not fulfilling you any longer, and just dive in, risky as that is?
Well, you know what? I think it's going to be different strokes for different folks, because I think you have to check in with yourself to feel like what is going to be the most appropriate thing to do. For some people, being in their current job is such an energy drain for them that they don't have anything else to give. And in that situation, sometimes it might be better to just say, okay, I need to make a clear cut and just start from scratch and do that. And I'm not telling people to be irresponsible. Make sure that you could financially swing it if you had to for several months without having a paycheck coming in or having a stream of income. But I feel that it depends on the situation. For me, leaving that old world was a necessity because sometimes what we're supposed to be doing is so in our face we don't realize it until you're out of the situation. And then you look back and you're like, you hit your forehead and you're like, well, shucks, it was there all the time. So for me, that's what pretty much happened. I had to formally leave what I was doing in order to look at things from a different perspective. And so I'm actually going back into, the healthcare situation, but in a different capacity.
One that's more flexible.
One that's more flexible, and it's geared towards probably helping way more people than I had been helping. And I helped a lot of people to start with. But it depends too. And for me, going back into healthcare in a different capacity, if I was doing both at the same time, I think there would have been a lot of confusion because that's my market. So what hat are you working? What are you doing? So when you make a clean break, sometime when you're in the same industry, it might be better. When you're in an industry where you're going to be working in the same industry and they're your same clientele and stuff, sometimes there could be a confusion as far as what is she doing now?
Right.
So like I said, I think it's such an individual decision. I think people should, number one, just do some reflection time on that. Are they in a situation financially to make a clean break, or do they still need to be working? And what are the possibilities at what they're currently doing? Is there a way of either working part-time while they're building this? Or is there a way of, working per diem or just doing consulting? This might be a better fit when you're trying to look at starting another career or entrepreneurial activity. And I know, Flavia, we talked about this before we got on this call about having multiple streams of income, which I feel that this is probably where we are all going as a group of humans, is that I don't feel that we're going to be doing one thing all the time. I feel like we're going to be doing multiple things and having what I call themes and variations. And you might be doing things that, might be part of your skill set, and then you might take on some other things that would fill in the blanks. But it's an opportunity to you're not relying on one particular stream of income to come in all the time. It's like not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Sure. Well, I just call that the multi-niche personality. And I think a lot of us are starting to fit that category. Myself included, you included, a lot of people in my social group, a lot of people in my just acquaintance group. And when you start networking and people give you what they're doing or their job titles, and all of a sudden they're stringing together 5 different things. I teach yoga and I am an author and I do this and I now consult on these things. And it's so great. And I think it gives people so much depth and makes their life so much interesting to allow themselves to be a multi-niche personality.
And I could see also where it could be a little dicey too. And this is something I probably want to talk about. It's like, it's good to do 3 or 4 things, but to make sure you know where the boundaries are for those as well. So there's not a lot of confusion, because you don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I think for some people, there's a thin line for that. So I just want people to be aware of that as well. Don't do so many things that you don't have enough time to do them appropriately.
Well, there have been studies done that say you're really an expert once you've done something for about 10,000 hours, give or take. And if you're a full-time worker at something, or you do something for, 6 to 8 hours a day, that would take you probably about 5 years or so to get to that level of expertise. And for a lot of people, if you think back to your own professional life, whatever it is you were doing, whether it was woodworking, working in medicine, being an attorney, I do think there is some truth to that 5-year mark. Once you've done something 5 years, you really do feel very capable. You're no longer deer in the headlights when something new pops up. You've probably seen it.
I totally agree. But you also need to stay current too. So, it's one thing if you're in industry for 5 years and you're an expert probably for the next several years, but things have been changing so quickly and rapidly across the board in all industries that you could fall behind if you don't stay up to date and educate yourself and keep current.
That's so true. So what are you working on now that's keeping you moving forward and excited for the future?
Well, I am, as you know, my new company is called Recovering Healthcare. And what my company does is we look at the gaps in healthcare, and as we were talking earlier, creating bridges to fill those gaps. As we know in healthcare right now, it's gone under massive changes, and we know in the next 5 years it'll probably be way different than it is now. There's just been so many rapid changes, and keeping up with those changes is such a challenge for people. So that was the impetus of writing my book, Help, How Do I Get the Most Out of My Healthcare Experience? It's a resource book, and it's a very simply written resource book. So this is for anybody. Anybody could read this and get something out of it. And I kept it simple for a reason, because there's a sector of our population, both elderly and even millennials, that maybe have never had interaction in healthcare, be it they don't have insurance, or they have insurance, or they've never been sick, or they have a family member that's never been sick and all of a sudden they're ill. This is like a little book you could put in your purse, your back pocket, your briefcase, and it tells you more about how to pick out your doctor if you never had to do that before, how to get your medical records in order, and importance of getting your financials and everything else in line with that. But also just as an advocate, being your own advocate for yourself, teaching people how to do that. When my parents were alive, I lived here in beautiful Encinitas, California, and my parents lived in Florida. And I used to empower coach them from here to there, because first of all, I live 3,000 miles away. I couldn't pick up and go every time there was a crisis, nor did I want to, because my parents were very capable of making their own healthcare decisions. They just needed some coaching. So I would make suggestions and they would follow up. And I realized that, oh my God, at least my parents have me. Imagine people who don't have anybody like me in their immediate family or their circle of friends. They're like sitting ducks. They wouldn't even know where to start. So I decided after they passed that I was going to write this book, and that's what I did. And so it just got published this spring.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It actually is a great resource book for anybody, and it's available on my website, recoveringhealthcare.com/books. And what it talks about, we talk about being proactive. And I also thread through there listening to that little voice that's inside of you, because a lot of times, especially when we're sick, we give our power away to sources outside ourselves. We become extremely vulnerable and want somebody to do it for us or answer the questions so we feel better. And sometimes that little voice speaks up and says we shouldn't be doing this, but we give our power away saying, well, I think maybe they should because they know more than I do. And sometimes we live to regret that because that little voice was probably keeping us away from having a complication, but yet we went through it and we ended up having a complication. It's as simple as that. So I really strongly encourage people throughout this book to listen to that voice. If something doesn't feel right, keep asking questions and don't go there. I tell people that, if you have a doctor and you're not comfortable with your doctor, you don't have to stay with him. You could fire him. You have permission to fire them and get somebody else. Consider finding your healthcare provider as if you're dating somebody. You need to court them and find out if they're going to work with you, because as a person and a human being, you have lived in your physical body your whole entire life. You know your body better than any healthcare provider does. And sometimes healthcare providers mean well, and they're following Western medicine. And, sometimes it's not the right fit for you, and it's okay. So I give people permission to say no and to take their power back in ways that they need to do that. So that's one of the things that I do. And I have 2 projects actually that I'm working on currently. Since my background's been in surgery for the last 30 years, and I'm an expert at preparing patients for a successful surgery, I have a concierge surgical coaching program that helps people maneuver through their surgical process. And we know that our surgeons are experts at what they do. They're experts at the physical body and taking care of the physical body. But that's only 1/4 of what is needed for complete health and wellness. You have the emotions, your mental perspective, and your connection, your spiritual connection. Those other 3 things are very important to have a complete success with your surgical intervention. People don't realize that. And the physicians, bless their hearts, they're experts at the physical stuff. They're not so good at addressing the stressors that people have in their lives that may have contributed to them needing surgery. That's where I come in, because I have a gift to be able to look at people and figure things out from what's happened emotionally, mentally, their beliefs, and also their connection with that in addition to the physical. So when I meet with people, when I work with them, I do a very in-depth collection of data of what was going on with them in their life. What are your stressors? What are your fears? What's this, that, and the other? And you find out a plethora of things that, okay, now we know what their belief system is and how they contributed to needing to have surgery. People think that the physical thing is separate from all these things. That is not true.
I love that you walk people through that. It's a very holistic approach, and it's looking at the person as more than just a machine, an organic machine. And while you were talking, I was thinking, this is the perfect gift. Your book called Help, How Do I Get the Most Out of My Healthcare Experience, would be the perfect centerpiece for a care package or a gift basket to give to somebody who is facing all of this, either for themselves or maybe for a family member, because I think we've all faced that before. You hear a good friend, a family member, or maybe just an acquaintance, or maybe a coworker, someone you're not necessarily close to, but when you hear the news that, someone came down with either, the big C, cancer, or some other debilitating period in their life, deep down you're going to push for them to get better, and you don't really know what to say too. There is that. You want to send something, you want to send a card, you want to maybe make a phone call, send a message. But for anybody that's looking to send a care package or a flower basket or something of that nature, I cannot imagine a more perfect component than to include a copy of your book, because it just shows so much care and compassion and empathy for what the person's going through, but it's also helping, because we feel helpless, right? I mean, we're not experts. We don't know what to do. It's not like I can call and say, oh, let me help you fill out some of these forms. Let's, do some research. But your book takes people by the hand and really makes them feel empowered and gives them that confidence. So I now have it. That next time that I face that, I hope I never face it again, where I hear that somebody got diagnosed, came down with something. But if I do, I have the perfect gift from the heart to give to them.
And the other thing too, if people are going to have surgery, besides the coaching program that I have, I offer a free informational webinar of important things to know before, during, and after surgery for a successful surgery. And I also have multiple programs. It's a little bit for everybody, but my most keynote type of product is available on my website. And it's actually 3 separate webinars that are 20 minutes apiece that tells people what's important to know before surgery, what's important to know during surgery, and what's important to know after surgery. And it comes with a bonus guided meditation for a successful surgery. And that's available on my website for a nominal, very small cost. But it's well worth it, especially if people don't even know where to start. This is a real good entry product, and it gives them some ideas and allows them to think a little bit, because there's so much that goes through people's heads, especially if it's unexpected. It's like, oh my God, you know what? I have to go to the doctor because I had a colonoscopy and they found something, and now they want to take, I need to have surgery to take something out. And it's just like all these things come up for people. And it's a scary situation. I use the thing, does surgery scare the asterisk out of you? That's like my tagline. It does. For some people, it could be immobilizing. And how to deal with the stress and how to deal with all these other questions, and what questions do I need to ask, and are there other, it's like going through a minefield sometimes for these people.
Yeah, and so emotional. I mean, they're facing mortality. If there's anesthesia involved, then you know that is so close to the state of death, where you're not in your body.
Well, it is. And, Flavia, you're in your most vulnerable state. When you're undergoing an anesthetic, it's just like, well, sometimes people don't wake up. I'm just going to say it like that. I mean, it's happened. But the thing is, it's like there's a big trust and a vulnerability that's part of that. Fortunately, that's the exception to the rule. But I mean, yeah, it can happen. And it has.
Well, thank you so much for all that you do to help people through that period in their lives, if and when they face it, and getting people the help they need and the resources they need, for putting your knowledge into a book. I always encourage people to write and to put their thoughts and their knowledge and expertise into a book, if that's something on their list of things, on their bucket list of things they want to do. So thank you for doing all that you have done and all that you continue to do for everybody. And again, I am so honored to have you on the podcast to share this part of your journey as you face sort of slightly blank canvas. You know what you're going to do, but you don't know where it's going to take you. And I can't wait to see where it takes you.
I know. It's just like, it's about surrendering and just allowing. It's a big, scary deal sometimes.
Well, cheers to being receptive, to surrendering, to accepting, to going into the future with courage and excitement. And I'm looking forward to having you on the show again sometime, hearing what you've done and all the different ways that this experience has taken you. I do hope that you come back on the show and that you let us know how the consulting goes in this area, because, we have the baby boomers. Medicine is changing so much day by day. Healthcare is changing so much day by day. We have an election coming up, so we don't know what kind of policy changes may be coming up in the next 4 years. So this is a really important time for everyone to be connected to someone like you. So I do encourage listeners, go to recoveringhealthcare.com, just like it sounds, recoveringhealthcare.com. If you want to get those books, you can go to /books on that website. And thank you, Dr. Dolores, so much for being on the show today.
Flavia, thank you. And I would be delighted to come back and speak with you again.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness, but money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use a coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.